Good morning. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Inspire XT Connected Intelligence Live. I'm your host Kuldeep Thakur, and today we are recording episode 7 of our series. This is broadcasting live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Let me start with the mission Inspire XT is on because it's the reason this series exists, and it is the reason today's conversation matters for us. At InspireXT, we are a full supply chain domain transformation company. Our mission is to connect commerce to operations. These words have meaning for us. Think about how much has been invested in the last 2 decades. And by that, I mean billions of dollars and a lot of resources. And that investment has largely gone towards the front end of the business. So, be it CRM systems, demand planning systems, digital commerce, customer experience, largely speaking, where we capture demand signals or the customer order. And of course, that's how the world grew, the internet and new technologies and number of media through which customer could buy and interact with your brand and products. Um, However, something extraordinary happened to those demand signals. As they travel through your value chain, they start to distort those signals, they start to become weaker, and the fidelity is lost along the way. In actual fact, those signals belong to the shop floor, to the operations, because that's where your demand, that's where your signal becomes a product, that's where your customer promise gets the reality check. And that's where margin is made or lost. And yet it is consistently the last place in the enterprise to receive that intelligence. Think about that. That's why Inspire XT made an early strategic choice to invest in this priority to bridge this gap, to ensure that the silos that exist within the company are connected through a horizontal chain of signals being transmitted without distortion, without delay, and they get where they need to get so you can serve your customers better. We call this connected intelligence. That is essentially um, key to how we transfer those signals and how we keep them consistent. It means when the signal is generated at the point of commerce, whether it is a customer order, whether it is demand shift, whether it is a service commitment, it flows through with full fidelity. In return, your customers are up to date with what's happening with their demand. Your customers are clear at what stage their demand is being addressed. And today we go to the heart of it, the shop floor, the place where this intelligence either works or does not work. And here is something very interesting. We've spoken to many leaders, many manufacturers, many CEOs. Everyone knows this. Factories generate millions and billions of signals every day. The information is already there. The machines, the sensors, the systems, they're constantly telling us what's happening. Yet, those signals are not converted into decisions, timely decisions, so that we could save the quality, the cost, and many other things that get lost. And that gap between signal and the decision is why we are here today to talk about how we can um, how we can begin to understand that and feel that. And I'm very excited today to welcome two of my guests. Uh, I've made it a tradition on this podcast to have two people, one from industry and one from Inspire XT. And the goal really is to say what industry is doing and how we are supporting that, and try and understand how the best of both worlds can be connected together. So, Kamal, a warm welcome um, uh, to Connected Intelligence Live. Those of you who joined us in the past, I think episode 5, Will Knight from Litmus joined us. Will is a senior industry leader, um, and that's where we got introduced to Litmus. And today, Kamal joins us for the first time, and hopefully for the first time, but not the last time. We're going to have a lot more conversations with Kamal. Um, and we get a bit more deeper into why Litmus and what they're doing, and his own personal story. So, Kamal, if I may ask you to please introduce yourself, and then we'll introduce Satish and get right to the topics.
Yeah, thank you, Kuldeep. I'm very happy to be here and thanks for inviting me. I think this is a great opportunity to share my thoughts with the larger audience and the ecosystem that Inspire XT is building. Okay, so just by way of introduction, I'm the managing director for Litmus India, and in that role, I've got three primary responsibilities. I'm building our global capability center out of Pune, India, where we are all our next generation product development. We are part of that. We are supporting our global operations from here. So that's something we recently started a new office here, and there's a lot of investment that the company is making. The second role I play is grow the market in India itself. So India, we have a lot of marquee customers: Tata Steel, Tata Motors, MRF, EID Parry, Tata Steel. These are all great customers who have shown confidence and trust on our platform. And the idea is to grow from here. And we see a remarkable change in the buying pattern in India and in general the industry, where they understand the value that a platform like Litmus brings in. My third responsibility is driving AI transformation within Litmus itself. How do we become more and more AI native as a company? And I think that's a good segue to talk about my earlier roles. I was, before joining Litmus about a year back now, I was the chief digital officer in Adani Group, which is a large conglomerate in India. I was the CDO for Adani Energy Solutions Limited, and of course driving digital transformation was the key part of my agenda there. Okay, and I did multiple roles when I was at Adani. I built the Adani industry cloud, which is, you can say, like the cloud where the if Litmus were to send the data in cloud, that's where it will go. And we had like billions of data points coming across different Adani group companies, which we used to analyze and deliver value. I built and started the Adani AI lab. So multiple exciting roles that I was able to play at Adani. Prior to that, I was with Aveva, which is a tech company in the industrial software. Prior to that, multiple system integrators. But I've always been in the industrial software space. So this has been my passion, but I've seen it from all angle, right? So as a system integrator, as a technology provider, and an end user. So really excited to be here and share my point of view. Thanks for inviting again.
Great. Thank you for that, Kamal. It's quite a diverse experience set, and we will benefit, and our audience will benefit from that wisdom. So, over to you, Satish. Welcome back. You've been here before. Uh, Please introduce yourself, what you do at InspireXT, and how you're helping customers, and generally a little bit more about your experience.
Sure. Thanks, Kuldeep. Thanks for having me once again, and good to talk to you again, Kamal. So I'm based in Bangalore, and of course, I'm responsible for the global enterprise applications practice at Inspire XT. Uh, Close to about 28 years, if you will, in the enterprise application space. Today, within Inspire XT, responsible for the enterprise applications practice. So that's one. Second, of course, the reason why we are meeting today and talking to you all is about the connected shop floor. So I'm responsible for the value that we are going to take to the clients and the marketplace in terms of a connected shop floor solution, working alongside Litmus. So that's one of the primary responsibilities that I'm carrying today, to ensure that we go to the market and the clients and we deliver collective value. And looking forward to talking to you, Kamal and Kuldeep, and
Awesome.
take valuable inputs over to the audience as well.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. That was good, crisp on time. We will now start talking a little bit about. I'm going to start with you, Kamal, and I think you touched on your role as a CDO with the Adani Energy, and I think this is, and as you said earlier when we met, that a lot of people ask this. Let me also ask it again. From a very large conglomerate on the other side of the table, being a customer, um, what sort of inspired you to give Litmus a go, and what is it about Litmus that you think you can now migrate from being a user or a strategist to a builder? Just share some of that inside story with us.
Sure. Uh, thanks for asking that. So, like I said, I get asked that question many times, and see, when I joined Adani, it was for a very specific reason, was to see the other side of the coin, right? I mean, I always been a solution provider. So, what does it mean to be on the other side? And it was a great learning experience. Adani is, as you all know, is a very dynamic, fast, exponentially growing group. So there is no dearth of challenging projects there, and gave me a lot of experience. Uh, so so that was the whole idea, right? How do I take the industrial solution and make them happen on the customer side? So one of the project or program that I was leading was the Adani Industry Cloud, and that was we were pulling data from all our plants. And the first phase of the program was focused on renewable energy. So we were pulling data of all our solar plant and wind plants onto a massive platform that we built on Google Cloud. So we were like pulling for about 10 gigawatt worth of energy. We were pulling millions of data points onto a platform, and we were having issues in terms of bringing this data, millions of data points from the plants to the cloud, right? And that's where I started working with Litmus, how Litmus can solve this problem for us. Because what we realized at that time is that, it's not just about getting data. It's about getting data that is ready for your AI or your analytics, or whatever you want to do. Otherwise it is just garbage, and the context is lost by the time the data comes from the ground to your cloud final application. And in an environment like renewable energy, there are a lot of noise that gets created when the data signals are generated. So how do you handle the noise at the ground and still ensure good quality data is going to your end user applications? We had a lot of success with Litmus, which really made my conviction about the platform grow. Uh, but another thing that started happening is, how do I now start closing the loop? Because I'm generating insights, okay? But unless those insights, I'm able to take those decisions, I'm able to go back and close the loop. There's a lot of value that is left on the table. And while I didn't do that at Adani, didn't get time, but I could see that Litmus is making that possible for me to run algorithms on the edge, okay? And somewhere I started getting that conviction that this is the future of AI in the industrial environment, that AI has to run on the edge, and we'll talk more about it today
Sure.
as we move forward. So I was so convinced with this platform, right? And I felt that this is where I should be, and it gives me an opportunity to take it to many more users.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I think you touched on quite important topics, like data has to have some sort of a continuity, and otherwise it's not useful. So you can collect a load of data, but if you can't do much with it, then
Yeah.
it's a lot of effort wasted. And of course, insights and decisions coexisting. But I always sort of, I always wonder about this tech. Some of our industry colleagues are cynical about, is it a really new category? Is it just old in a new sort of skin? How do you define litmus category? Is it? I mean, I reckon you'll be a little bit biased because you're at Litmus, but you can also give an industry view as to, and there's actually no wrong or right answer. It's just the answer that industry needs to know, because authentically that's where things matter. So, is it really a new category of software and solution, or do you think it's done a better way?
So, see, I started my career in 98 and we were still able to collect data at that time from the
Yeah,
machines. We were still able to historize it. Okay. Uh, but what the ability to process that data was very, very limited. Okay. And those were the days of 486 computers and floppy disk and whatnot, right? But the algorithms were there. I still remember using model predictive control to control a cement grinding mill.
yeah,
Okay. But how reliable was it? And how much will a plant head trust that algorithm to run his plant actually? Okay. And then the whole concept and the cloud technology started evolving. Once cloud started coming into the picture with this ability to move gigabytes of data to the cloud and build models and be much more reliable, right? I think that's when the business case for a platform like Litmus started happening. Okay. Yes, there were still connectors, right? There are still systems that will send the data to the cloud. Okay. But like my own experience goes, that's just start of the problem, or that actually makes your problem worse.
yeah,
Okay. Because now you're having all the data in the cloud. One is you're running a lot of money trying to clean that data. There's no confidence. You're always talking to business guys whose version of the data is correct, because on the shop floor there are going to be so many exceptions, there's going to be so much noise. Okay, so unless you take the data and you process the data and make it ready for AI, okay, it's not it's you won't see the value from all that data that is you are taking. So for me, Litmus is much, much more than just collecting data. It is about taking the data, contextualizing, normalizing, building the data models right on the edge, and scaling it out, right? I mean, again, we are not talking about a very small site, okay, with maybe 5 parameters. We are talking about sites which are fairly complex, right, and which where one batch lost is millions of dollars, right? So we need to bring enough data at the right frequency. That's another thing, right? How do you get data at millisecond level frequency in a reliable manner so that you are able to run your algorithm? So Litmus to me, I mean, I can always stitch together 5 6 different point solutions and get the capability that Litmus brings.
yeah,
But then that is a system integration project in
yeah,
itself.
yeah,
Okay, there's a lot of latency as the data moves from one to another.
yeah,
And in this environment, you want absolute reliability, that if you are saying that it is X, then has to be X,
yeah.
right?
I think you've covered quite relevant topics over there. Of course, a lot of our audience and industry out there, or leaders, will resonate. This data collection is no more a challenge, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can bring a lot of data, structured, semi-structured, all that. It's making it useful at a point of storage, but also cheaper and affordable and accessible. So um, let's talk a little bit, and I'll come to you, Satish, shortly, but I'll continue on this with Kamal for one or two questions. Um, I think when Will was here, and when we were getting sort of introduced to Litmus a few months ago, a few quarters ago, he talked about scaling as one of the problems. And I mean, somebody who's done multi-pillar, multi-country ERP programs, that also is very relevant situation, right? So what really, from your perspective, from Litmus perspective, from automation perspective, breaks when you actually start to accomplish or go after scale? Give us a bit more context around that.
So I think the primary challenge, Kuldeep, right, once you get into industrial environment, is these factories, they have grown over time, right? A typical enterprise It's not that if there are 50 sites, all 50 sites came at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. And even within the site, the lines may have come at different points in time. So then what ends up happening is you have different OEMs, different controllers. There's no standardization in terms of tag schema, okay, or even the units of measurement. So as you move, the same packaging line in the plant may look very different when you see it from a data perspective. Okay, so if you have built a model for one line, taking it to the next line, okay, making sure it works in exactly the same way as it was working on line one. Maybe it's a simple OE calculation, okay, or maybe it's a very complex machine learning model.
Yeah.
Unless you are absolutely sure that tag and 1_a refers to temperature in both cases, you will end up making mistakes,
Sure.
right? And we are talk and then you scale that across hundreds of packaging lines. Okay, so I have done such projects where we tried, for example, to build a transformer health analytics in my previous job. A transformer, an electrical transformer, will typically have 200, 300 tags. Okay, now each transformer, the tags are named differently, the same tags.
Mm.
Okay, and their corresponding names in SAP is also very different.
Yeah.
Okay, so just it took us months just to rationalize the tag names across the key transformers, not all the transformers.
Sure.
But what Litmus does is, it allows you to build this layer in between, right? Where you, irrespective of the inconsistencies on the south side, you are now able to create data models. There's a transformer has 200 parameters, and this is what you call them. Once you have done that, right? Every transformer across the enterprise now appears uniformly. Any
Mm.
models you build, you are able to deploy across any of the transformer,
Yeah.
right? And we all know machine learning models are not one time activity. You keep adding new stuff there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's the part which makes Litmus really scalable. And then there are, of course, a lot of utilities which allows you to seamlessly deploy. We have Litmus Edge Manager, which allows over-the-air updates of models across all the sites.
Yeah.
But typically, we have seen, right, what used to be months in terms of going live at a site is now days or weeks.
Wow. Yeah. I think that's that complexity you've taken away into productizing. That. Okay. Awesome. I will give you some time. Thank you for providing us with that insight. Satish, let me come to you. We talked about signals or tags or data, and all ultimately it's all data coming together. So when these signals are there, the data is there. Um, why do you think? Because you do a lot of system integration work and transformation work,
Yep.
but we're still reactive as an organization, right? I mean, we are not able to sort of get to the front end and say, well, we can preempt all these challenges and things like that. Why? What's the main driver, reason behind that? Do you think?
Yeah, I think this state of affairs, Kuldeep, that you just articulated, wherein so a lot of signals available in the manufacturing space on the shop floor, but still organizations tend to be reactive. I think this clearly depends on the maturity level within the overall industry 4.0 scheme of things. One, of course, is the level of process maturity, and of course, the technology footprint, the kind of data leverage, if you will, and also at the same time, the convergence of data.
Yeah.
Manufacturing setup with multiple facilities, disparate ecosystem, be it tech and applications. Convergence of data also matters, and hence, if the data is not put to the right leverage, then reactiveness is what will actually be front ending the overall operations instead of being proactive and predictive and prescriptive,
Mm.
right? So I would just want to take one example here, which is the evolution of the maintenance strategies itself.
Sure.
So if you look at maintenance in particular on the shop floor, it all started with we being a bit of reactive in nature. Whenever there was a problem, then we went ahead to fix that, right? So then came a bit of a discipline in terms of doing preventive maintenance so that you could avoid a lot of breakdowns in future. Now came the condition-based monitoring, with some level of data being put to leverage in terms of the sensor level data from the shop floor coming over to an application, if you will, giving us the parameters and the anomalies, so that based on certain conditions, initially the alerts, then the warnings, then of course you cannot wait to execute an action, right? So that was the evolution from reactive to preventive to condition based.
Yeah.
Now, taking this couple notches above is where the Industry 4.0 technology components come in. Today, manufacturers are investing in a lot of technologies and trying to integrate those so that you could deliver the required value, move from being reactive at the bottom of the pole over to becoming more prescriptive. Uh, After condition based comes your predictive, right? So you will start to infuse that AI ML based technology layer already to predict when a particular equipment may go down, right? But it doesn't stop there. You still need to evolve and say, can you prescribe when and how should a particular manufacturing critical equipment has to be maintained, rather than just predicting when that will fail? Can you
Mm.
prescribe so that I can reduce my inventory carrying cost in terms of the spare parts that I need to carry? Or can I adjust the preventive maintenance schedule in itself? If I'm doing a bi-monthly schedule, can it be pushed out to just be a quarterly maintenance based on the historical performance of the equipment?
Sure.
Right? So I think the investment that an organization needs to make, that's a given. And
Yeah.
also the kind of integration seamlessly across multiple technology layers, all the way from shop floor to top floor,
Yeah.
infusing all the required technology components. Of course, it goes without saying today, infusing AI has become a commonplace, but it is more important than ever to infuse that as well, so that you could move from a reactive approach to a prescriptive approach. I've just
Yeah.
uh,
Good.
try to take maintenance as an example, but the same principle, guiding principle, applies across rest of the operations on the shop floor.
Yeah, and thanks for that. I think there's a theme that sort of emerges, right? So um, we have this habit of collecting a lot of information, but not thinking two, three steps, four steps forward and saying, what could we do with this information? Or maybe starting from that fifth step back and saying, only if I could do this, I need this. So I think both of you are highlighting as a pattern emerging. Um, I'll come back to this a little bit later as well, but you talked about edge, Kamal, and I think we've heard about this um, of late in the context of IoT, that cloud and edge and on-prem and all those sort of good old technologies, edge being new. Um, and I think you drive with edge intelligence as a business, as a product solution. So tell us a little bit more about what it is in the context of um, the overall shop floor, and where should actually decision be made, and where can you automate it, and where would you need to, even though you could automate, but you need to intentionally keep it with the people so that they can apply some intelligence, their own personal intelligence intellect to it.
So I think there are two parts to it, right? One is uh, how soon you need to react to an event that is happening on the floor, right? And is it just for information purpose you're looking at the data, or you're trying to actually analyze it and take a decision based on it? Okay, so if you take those two dimensions, right? Now let's say you just want to know in real time what's happening. Okay, you don't intend to take any decisions. And you need that granularity of data. So let's say, you're looking at microsecond level stoppages in a machine. You can't take that data to the cloud and do that analysis there. But if you want to calculate overall OE, what was my OE across the entire day, yes, that data can be taken to cloud and you can look at it. So one is that angle, right? How soon you want to look at the data and take, some action based on that. I think the other part, right, really is, are you using algorithms to optimize the performance of your machines in real time? Okay. The moment you start thinking in that direction, can I reduce the energy consumption of my cement grinding mill, for example? Okay, now that requires you to, let's say, scan the current set points, look at various other parameters, and take decisions in near real time. Okay, and you have to also then have the ability to implement that decision in real time. There is, I don't see a, I see we leave a lot of value if you run that model in the cloud.
Yeah.
The model gives you some output, and then you say, okay, now let me go and manually change the set point. You can do that once or twice, but it won't give you the consistent settings that you need. Okay, now the moment you want to close the loop, right, you don't want that two-way communication between your factory floor and cloud 24 by 7. First, primarily from cyber security perspective. Okay, so you want to have a siloed environment to a certain extent. Yes, you may have built the model on the cloud, trained it on the cloud using multi-year data, but now when for inferencing you want to run it on the edge. You want to collect the data, send it to your model, and close the loop right there. Another example could be around volume of data. Let's say using Vision AI. Based on that, you are doing some quality checks. Okay. Now you can't send your streaming data to the cloud and then run the algorithms there. It's just cost prohibitive as well as not the best architecture. So then you have your Vision AI running inside Litmus, get the CCTV feed here, convert that into a signal, and then actually use that to create interlocks on your machine, right? I think that's a very powerful paradigm where Vision AI is actually driving, the on and off, let's say, of a
Mm.
machine
Mm.
because it detected certain quality issues.
Sure.
Okay, I think those use cases, and that's where you'll start seeing the value beyond just calculating KPIs, which has a lot of value, by the way, calculating KPIs, but running models on the edge, actually.
Mm. Great. So obviously speed and volume and
Cybersecurity.
the the decision sort of frequency and concurrency, those should be the decision criteria as to what lives on edge and what
Yeah,
comes back to cloud. Of course, everything that lives on edge ultimately comes somewhere just to keep it, but it's the instantaneousness of it that
yeah,
matters. So, a related question to that, Kamal, would be that, when we talk about this industrial project, the general sort of convention is they are like big, red, hairy projects. They take forever to complete. But we are in this world of AI. How fast can you do something like this? How do you go about that?
see, what I've realized is there's no point doing a carpet bombing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's no point saying that, okay, I've got 100,000 data points in my plant. Let's get all of that. Let's build the data model. Let's clean it up, and then we figure out what to do with it. Okay, that's an approach. It can work, but it will take some time before you can show the business value. So you need to find that balance where you bring a platform approach. I have seen programs which could did not get funded because there was too much focus on the technology platform, and I've seen programs which did not succeed because there was no platform thinking. Okay, so both needs to be balanced. You need to focus on how soon can you show the business value, but at the same time, are you doing it the right way in a scalable way? Okay, and and I think that's the key to success. So we need to pick a platform, but not, pick a key use case, and then be able to show the value with that key use case and tie it all the way to your corporate metric.
Yeah.
So it's very important to come top down, pick that one metric which is important to the CEO of the company. Okay, and find out those dependent variables, right, which will impact the metric. Okay, so and then figure out how you are going to improve those metrics at the plant level. And you need to, rather than picking one plant and going 100 use cases, pick one use case and go 100 plants. Okay, because that's what Litmus allows you to do. Once you have done it for one plant, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just go deploy it across 100 plant, and
Yeah.
now suddenly that one key metric you are able to show the value.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a much faster path to success, and it sets you up for the next use case and the use case after that.
Yeah. I mean, that's so useful, so relevant. Um, the focus is shifted from these large multi-year transformations. And when I talk about that, this is typically the ERPs or the digital transformation type, mostly the business process transformation. Um, and we've always had this issue around global design rollouts, and then by the time you've done a design, something else has moved on, and then your design is invalid. And I really liked when Will introduced this to us at the very early stage, the horizontal versus vertical scaling. And that's
Yeah,
kind of what you're talking about, which is
exactly.
take one use case, tie it to a corporate metric or the metric that is of importance, and then roll it out
Yeah,
globally. So to your point, you've got the platform which is now established. So you have like you're going slower, but you actually go fast because now you have the same metric everywhere, and you can start introducing without actually distorting the implementation. So, and I think a lot of the time that discussion doesn't take place because either the money is a problem, or the technology is a problem, or mindset is a problem sometimes, right? So that's so useful. Thank you, Satish. I feel for our original domain transformation or business process transformation, integration with Shopfloor is always considered to be a last mile. And the word last means it comes in the last, not necessarily first, right? So uh, it's last mile problem for us, has been a problem for people because all we wanted to do was, is our material enough, are our people doing the right thing, do we have the financial information, and that's really what ended up being the scope of our ERP, so to speak. Um, but without this shop floor last mile integrations, etc., um, what sort of breaks in this, right? And how do we actually now help organizations get better value once we have these tools available to us?
Yeah, absolutely, Kuldeep. So this is like taking the industry 4.0 evolution. I'm going to repeatedly use this term in particular because everything is sort of revolving around this, right? Now, as you rightly mentioned, so we were executing an equation wherein it is ERP plus MES, and of course we are trying to take that to the next level with infusing AI, right? Now, the missing piece was the connect with the shop floor and what value we can deliver from the top floor if we could actually consume that data. But well, of course, we begin there, and of course, that has to be treated as the last mile as well in the overall journey. Having insight is one aspect, delivered through your execution system, and of course, taking that to the analytical layer and making decisions out of that insights provided by the analytical layer, and having an enterprise wide strategy aligned with this becomes very important, right? So we'll have to connect all these pieces together so that you achieve the objectives of the last mile. So, for example, in my journey, if my last mile is to improve productivity, reduce my inventory carrying cost, enhance my product quality, or for that matter, optimize my operations, and I will have to start with collecting the data from the shop floor, right? But if I only collect from the shop floor and not look at the other sources of data that are available, right? I'm in fact starting with a disconnected workflow already, which means I will not be able to complete my journey with the last mile, or for that matter, achieve the objectives of my last mile leg, right? So, which means I need systems, I need industrialized processes to enable the connect all the way from commerce through operations.
Mm,
So
mm,
that is what we are trying to enable with Litmus in the equation, followed by, say, for example, Oracle as an ERP and slash MES layer, and bring in another AI infused domain. That's what we're trying to do with Databricks also, given the kind of role it can play to deliver AI based outcomes. Now, these are certain enablers that we definitely need to infuse in the overall ecosystem if we were to ensure that the last mile doesn't break. We
mm.
are able to complete the journey into the last mile and meet those objectives. Again, the level of tech footprint from a digital as well as Industry 4.0 transformation perspective really matters.
mm,
And that's where we start with collecting the data. Of course, Kamal spoke about various use cases that will determine where your journey ends in terms of certain use cases wherein you can close the loop within the edge
mm,
computing layer itself, in this case, Litmus.
mm.
Or there may be use cases where you may have to take it to the next level, followed by AI, and bring that back into the execution layer so that you sort of complete your overall journey, enter into the last mile, meet your stated objectives as well.
Great, great. Kamal, anything to add to that?
No, no, absolutely, and I think this is the key message, right? So, and what we are talking about is, a very fundamental, different kind of system than typical shop floor will have, like a MES and a historian and a LIMS. All of that are there, right? But they are all recording what is happening. Okay, uh, litmus, or it's not about litmus, right? The domain that we are talking about, data and analytics, is what allows you to understand why things are not going the way they should
Mm,
be,
mm,
and allows you to react in real time. Okay, rather than post facto, to after 2 hours, when the whole batch is ruined or the whole shift is ruined. Okay, uh, because things develop, right? Nothing happens all of a sudden. The early you can catch the signal, the micro stoppages that the machine is exhibiting, or a
mm,
minor drift from the operating window. Okay, the earlier you are able to catch it, the chances of salvaging and saving, let's say if it's a batch or the machine, right?
mm.
uh, yeah, so last mile connectivity is the key here right now.
Yeah. And while I've got a segue into MES, obviously it's always on people's head. So in people's head. So you talked about it collecting what's happening, but it's not going away anywhere, right? So the MES is still core integral part of the shop floor. And it's for both of you. Just touch briefly on what's the coexistence slash replacement slash new opportunity that manufacturers now can do with Litmus, and kind of what do you say to production supervisors or operators or the shop floor engineers who may not be currently thinking of new paradigms, new solutions? How does one start to think differently because now they've got all this available?
So maybe I can share my perspective first, right? I mean, it is not that there's no need for MES, right? MES has a role to play, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe the new generation of MES will have a lot of embedded AI in terms of how to, plan more proactively or in a more optimized manner. When a hot order is coming, right? How to reprioritize the entire production floor.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, today all that is being done manually. Okay, but yes, so that's a role that an MES is going to play. How to prioritize my entire production shift, okay, or reprioritize, responding to the events, and that's where I see Litmus having a very good synergy. Again, when I say Litmus, like MES is a domain, uh, industrial data analytics, industrial AI is a domain, right? That's where I see industrial AI and MES playing a very complementary role, where industrial AI or the models that you're running, which are very specific to your factory, can inform the MES, right? And the MES can then take much more intelligent decisions. Or if the MES needs much more granular data, MES is not designed to collect microsecond level data, right? That's not the job.
Yeah.
But if it does need that data to do certain analytics, right, internal analytics, that's when you need a data ops platform which can bring that data. Okay, and I think one has to see Litmus or an equivalent platform as like a box that you install in every factory, which is bringing all your OT data onto one plane. Okay, whether it is coming from the CCTV or MES or the LIMS or the PLC or the historian, all of that is now available in one place. Okay, and even ERP data, if you need ERP data, all of that is now available in one place, correlated and contextualized with each other. And just imagine the kind of analytics that one can do if that is easily available.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, you need a suite of products to run this entire thing. Litmus brings all of that together and allows you to unlock more value.
Yeah. Anything else, Satish, you want to add to that?
And absolutely. I mean, let's take a step back also and see, assume that we do not have an edge platform in the overall equation. The equation consists of just ERP, and of course, an MES is a key component of the overall general term ERP.
Mm.
And you may want to drive insights, and the only way that you could drive insights is how can you amplify the feature functions of an MES system so that you feed a lot of intelligence via lot of data sources into MES and derive the insights, right? And of course, you have an option to infuse AI later. Now, what Litmus kind of applications could do is sort of amplify the outcomes that we could expect out of this equation,
Mm.
right? In terms of tightly interlocking MES with the edge side of the house, in this case, Litmus, and get that real time data. And at the same time, take that upstream as well, because the fun is when I could have an impact on my bottom line, right? So I need to have each of these elements in the overall equation talking to each other every second, tightly interlocked, so that the value across the chain gets amplified.
Yeah.
We cannot afford to have anything acting in isolation, while of course they are destined to deliver defined outcomes at each of their drawn boundaries. But we want all these systems talking to each other. MES will deliver, I mean, in fact, derive a lot of value from the incoming data from the edge side of the house. Consuming that, it will be in a position to deliver that kind of a value for upstream systems and close the loop back downstream as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the kind of architecture we need to look at if we were to deliver a lot of value in the
Mm.
overall value chain of any of the enterprises, manufacturing in particular.
Yeah. I mean, imagine, the amount of um, loss perhaps is not the right word because that's ultimately the outcome. But because of this duplication of signals and, silo being self-sufficient but not the chain, so to speak, right? Because I mean, organizations are inherently siloed. That's how they grow, and they continue to be like that. But the customer experience is always horizontal, right? I mean, as an employee, my experience is very horizontal. I need HR as I need finance and so on and so forth as the customer. And if every silo is self-sufficient, it's very efficient, but it's not very effective, right? Because it doesn't really give the value that the CEO is looking to give to its stakeholders and customers, of course. And joining these dots, coexistence of all various solutions, because let's face it, right? You suddenly cannot become a single solution company. It's going to evolve into all sorts of different pieces. And so story is evolution, not revolution. We can't really, and revolution never succeeds in that sense overnight, right? So that brings me to one more topic. Actually, two more topics, but one first is the moment we go away from the business process discussion to data and integration, right? Then there is of course a lot of possibilities because you can do lots of if and else and whatever scenarios with, but ultimately the business process also matters, right? How does this whole thing uh, work together? And Satish, maybe I can come to you because that's kind of what we do in Oracle and Salesforce and others.
Yep.
But it's also not a case of we have 3 years now to do a business process transformation. We want to do that like in weeks. If we can do in days. That'll be awesome. So tell us what we are doing, what the arts of the possible is, and then how this whole thing organizations can leverage. So maybe
Yep.
touch on natural AI and other those kind of
Sure,
things.
absolutely. Kuldeep. So before that, I just want to spend a few seconds to talk about and why did we even choose Litmus and for that matter even Oracle and
Yeah.
Databricks as three technology foundations, if you will, to deliver the mission of connected shop floor, right? So that's where our approach as an organization comes into picture, which is we get into a transformation state of execution, right? So we are sort of committed to deliver enterprise level value, uh, first thing first, with commerce to operations connect and perspective. So that's the length and breadth of transformation that we actually embark on for any of our clients, right? And this particular equation of edge plus enterprise plus AI fits very well in this objective. So if you ask me, Industry 4.0 technologies, again, I'm using the term, are actually changing manufacturing in many ways, right? So manufacturers are integrating new technologies into their production facilities, throughout their operations, not just one particular domain. It could be maintenance for certain organizations, but there are set of organizations which are actually investing in technologies to integrate operations through and through in their overall product life cycle, including manufacturing, right? So hence, taking an approach of digital transformation, looking at what technology components will actually deliver value is what we deliver as an outcome. And we have been very cautious and conscious in terms of selecting the right technology and going to the market so that the client gets amplified value and they derive tangible business outcomes out of these investment. Hence, you will see Litmus, Oracle, Databricks. And on top of that, we also try to bring in our own IPs and accelerators, in this case, natural AI that Inspire XT has, will be able to deliver value right at the edge also on the shop floor for the maintenance supervisors or the production supervisors in terms of looking into content that they will definitely need to execute their day job, be it work instructions or maintenance instructions, or for that matter asking a query and getting output in terms of what is the actual step that needs to be performed if I were to improve the performance of a particular equipment,
Got it.
right? So that's where I see natural AI also complementing the enablers in this overall equation so that the outcome that the client gets is sort of amplified and seamless.
Awesome. Thank you. I think it's we are coming close to our and I mean there's so many other questions and discussions we can have. So it's coming back. Hopefully, you both will be back soon. But we need to stick to our timing. Before I conclude, obviously today very intentionally we didn't talk very broad around AI, the topic of it. We wanted to focus purely on shop floor and Litmus and the OT side of the world. But if I were to ask both of you, just as a one final thought, and you can weave in AI if you wanted to in that, um, just leave with our audience one thought, and maybe Kamal, I can start with you. That if a manufacturer or production supervisor or the personas on the shop floor are watching it or they come across this, what one action would you or thought would you leave them with if they were thinking of starting on this journey or are facing some challenges, etc. To, yeah.
Sure, sure. I think that's a good question to wrap this up. Uh, I think, each of these personas, right, they need to understand where the technology is leading us, right? And it is moving towards a world where there will be a lot of algorithms on the shop floor, okay? And the idea is that who's gonna win in that world, okay? Or is it people who avoid running those algorithms or who are ready to run those algorithms in a very reliable manner,
Mhm.
okay? So I think everyone needs to start preparing, right, the foundation where we can start, and of course the foundation of any algorithm is data, okay? So we need to start preparing our data foundation, make sure the data quality is good, it's accessible, it's AI ready. So we start from there. We start also thinking of a, and I think you mentioned, Kuldeep, siloed, right? Siloed, yes, it's important to have an MES which is an intelligent MES, okay? But the real value comes with a unified AI when the CCTV is able to talk to your MES system in a very seamless manner. Okay, the signals from the CCTV can actually be utilized by some other system. Okay, so how do you enable that unified AI on your shop floor? Okay, so we need to start thinking about that. Now this whole topic of let's say large language models, we didn't talk about it today, but eventually they are going to create an impact, right? Yes, today maybe people are a little bit not sure how reliable they are in the context of shop floor, but they're just 2 years 3 years old, and just see the amount of improvement there.
Yeah,
So in maybe another 2 3 years, they are reached a level of reliability where there are genuine use cases for large language models. Okay, so how are you going to run them? How are you going to give them the context that they need? Okay, to be able to give you that insight using large language model. So I think that, so my net my message is, let's start thinking about building that foundation. Yes, you have to balance it with quick wins to show the value of what you're doing, but let's not take the shortcuts, right? Because then you can't scale up,
sure.
especially if you have multiple plants that you need to manage.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I think shortcuts and scales don't exist.
Yeah.
Data being a foundation. So thank you for that, Kamal. Satish, any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, absolutely, Kuldeep. Thanks, Kamal. I think Kamal used a very key word, which is unified. And I think there is another keyword which is connected as well. Uh, so, from that perspective, I think the manufacturers listening in to this particular podcast, I presume that uh, they have complete clarity and visibility to the enablers of a connected shop floor. Uh, but I think if they are embarking on a journey of establishing a connected shop floor, I think complete clarity and visibility is key. And of course, they need to achieve a fully connected shop floor and at the same time dynamically connected shop floor as well, right? So hence, they need to be cognizant of what will enable this and take them to the level of achieving a fully and dynamically connected shop floor, so that the top floor could enable the decisions and execute operations all the way from commerce, so that the value in the overall value chain is amplified. Hence, taking a very critical and pragmatic view of all the enablers and where they need to actually start the journey. If they could start with Edge, reap the benefits and also amplify that with coupling with MES and then move on to AI. So that will be a textbook roadmap for people for all the manufacturers.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you both. Thank you, Satish and Kamal. Let me summarize. We've come close to the end of our hour. We keep it 45 minutes to 1 hour, so we are well within our range. But it's so diverse. The range is so big on shop floor that we could spend another hour easily and still not be done. So thank you for bearing with us. I mean, we heard, we wanted to have a conversation around how do we avoid signals getting distorted or staying distorted? How do we bring it all together? And how does Litmus enable that promise that we are making to our customer? Ultimately, it is about customer. I mean, the business exists because there's some uniqueness that it has got, and the customers like that uniqueness. And as you mentioned, Kamal, that in kind of the anticipation of growth, we start to take shortcuts. We start to build newer and newer silos, and then somewhere along the line, we start to forget that we exist because there was somebody who's believed in what we were selling or servicing, and of course, manufacturing floors are invested into. A lot of money has gone into it for meeting their promise, and yet believe we are I believe that we are leaving that value on the table. And this is where Litmus and business process transformation together can, um, I'd say, I wouldn't say, I think there is some value that is already happening, and that's why they exist. But you could multiply this whole value equation. You could accelerate the pace of transformation and think about the newer generation of workforce that is coming to your business. They are mobile enabled, AI enabled, LLM enabled, agentic enabled, and if you think that they are the future of our shop floor execution, you got to be ready with the tools and technologies and the processes that you can get them to appreciate and implement. So there is a lot to do, and AI is a great enabler, but it can also be a great disabler if you don't really start building the foundations that you talked about, both of you, and the business processes. So for everyone who's watching or will watch, if you want to explore what a connected shop floor looks like, of course, Litmus has got a great lab experience. InspireXT has built some connectors with it as well. So we can cover the full suite of commerce to operations and everything that happens, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we can help you, we can learn from you and build that journey for you. So we are going to be in Hanover Messe. I forgot to mention about that in April as well at Litmus's booth. So we look forward to speaking with you and helping you unpack some of these challenges. But both of you, Kamal and Satish, thank you very much for sharing your insights. It's been incredibly helpful. And I look forward to welcoming you back, hopefully not too long in future. Thank
Sure.
you.